How you doing? It's Ryan with First Aid Emergency Products. What we're talking about today is adding a slide-out cabinet to your SUV and if it's a good idea. So what we're going to talk about is some of the issues, considerations that you need to make when you're designing your cabinet and where some of the problems you may run into when you're designing it. So the first part that we're going to be talking about is adding a Slide Master slide to the cabinet to provide the cabinet to slide completely out of the vehicle for usage at a scene, whether it's for running incident command or just for storage. So right off the bat, the first thing that needs to be considered when adding a slide is we account for usually 4¼ inches of height of that slide before the cabinet goes into that. So what that means is when we're accounting for a 40-inch wide cabinet in a Tahoe, we usually would account for 26 inches height in this consideration normally. So before it has to be tapered in order to fit inside the vehicle. So adding a slide to that, you now have to take 4¼ inches out of that in order for that cabinet to fit with that slide underneath it. So when your space concerns are a consideration for yourself, losing that 4¼ inches across the entire depth of the cabinet could be a problem because that's precious space in an SUV. That 4¼ inches accounts to pretty much what we use for our command board height. The Slide Master slides tend to add about $1,000 to $1,200 depending on the depth. It may be less, it may be more, including freight, but that's a good point of reference to use for your cabinet. With that, you should have that built into your budget because it is an additional cost. If you're bringing any power or radio heads or communication cables up to that cabinet, you now need to account for a wire chain, which adds an additional cost to it. And the other thing that you need to account for is where you're mounting all your electronics now. Some of our cabinets have built-in electronics compartments in the back that allow you to mount your radio chassis, your siren controllers, your fuse panel, stuff like that in the back of that cabinet, and then provide an easy service area for that. When you're doing a slide out, you don't have that luxury. You tend to be now either using underneath the seat as your electronics area, which tends to not work out for equipment such as radio chassis, inverters, battery chargers because they're taller. So you now have to account for that to hopefully fit either on the side panels or in the back underneath where the cabinet would slide in, which probably will not work because we're only allowing for 4¼ inches. So on top of the cost, then you're also adding more weight than you normally would because they tend to be a couple £100, and then you also tend to add the noise factor. They tend to have somewhat of a rattle metal to metal sound because you are using a steel or possibly an aluminum slide master, and with that, it's going to move around. It's going to cause additional cabin noise that you may not want to hear. With all that stuff being said, as the cons to that, some of the pros to that would be allowing you to pull the entire cabinet out of the back of the vehicle. You can then have multiple different points of operations, let's say, for an incident, so you could have different workstations set up. The same way as you would in one of the pickup trucks. You can still have the front command board, you can still have the sides, whatever you want to do, you're operating more as that you would with a pickup truck. The other operations that you would do, let's say, is for an EMS. You could have that entire thing slide out and have just an open storage area. We have a couple just basic T-style cabinets that give you just plenty of room to store it. It all depends on how your department is going to operate and what you're trying to accomplish. There's a little bit more cons to the pros in that aspect because of the SUV and its functionality and what you're trying to do with it. The other option, if you're looking for something as a slide out, is instead of using the Slide Master slide, we can use our normal Accurite 600-pound slides, and they can function as the slide out mechanism. So you may not be losing as much room underneath. What you would be losing is about 1 inch to 1¼ inches of height from that cabinet because we would be building a frame that mounts down and then the slides would attach to that. So then with that, you're then losing now space off the side. So you'd be losing about 3¼ inches roughly. That may function a little bit better for you. It's going to be a little bit quieter because the Acura drawer slides have that built-in lock-in, lock-out feature. There's no adjustment, so you're not necessarily going to hear that metal-on-metal contact all the time. And you're also going to reduce the weight. You're going to reduce the cost. The Acura slides, depending on their length, tend to be a little bit more cost-effective than a Slide Master. Whatever your mission and whatever your budget is, it takes time to sit and figure out and utilize our staff to make sure that you get the product that's going to do the best for you and your department and make you operate as efficient as possible. Thanks for checking out our video today. We hope that we have given you some insight into this topic of adding a slide out to your SUV. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email, DM us on our social media pages, ask questions, and we'll hopefully give you some answers and provide you with the best that we can.